Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Jai Jinendra Aryan Jain. Very good afternoon. Jai Jinendra to you too. Good to see students here on a Sunday. Yes. So we are ready. We can start. Today, what we will cover is the topic which we left in the previous session. We had to complete the topic of accounts and records which we had completed and e-way bill which was missed out. So we had told that we will discuss e-way bill in this class. E-way bill as a procedure is a topic wherein we have to understand that when should we generate the e-way bill and when it is required, because it is a little different from supply. Supply happens, we have understood supply completely. So for every supply, should we raise a e-way bill or is it only in specific cases? What do you think? You have studied e-way bill? What is your understanding on e-way bill? If taxable supply plus tax is more than 50,000, okay. So in that case, if I make a provision of audit services, okay, I finished the audit season just got over, okay, and I have to raise a audit invoice to my client. The audit fees is 1 lakh rupees. So should I raise e-way bill? Consignment exceeds, no, but my value is more than 50,000, right? So why should I not raise then? Swati, even this question applies to you where the consignment exceeds 50,000 rupees. Okay. So in my example, should I raise a e-way bill? Om Krishnom is saying only when interstate supplied consignment value exceeds 50,000 rupees. So you mean to say intrastate I can do for 1 crore rupees without e-way bill? Right. Oh, we can do intrastate with any limit. No, that is not the case. Even if it is interstate Om Krishnam, you still have to raise a e-way bill because interstate doesn't mean that, okay, you can raise for any value and there will not be any kind of a control, right? So main objective of e-way bill, yeah, within a city also you can have 50 kilometers are in that it can go 50 kilometers within a state, right? From in even a city itself, you will see that 50 kilometers easily are touching. So there are two criteria. Firstly, it is applicable for goods, definitely, like how have every one of you have pointed out that when the transaction is consisting of supply of goods, only then we will raise a e-way bill. So if I do provide a service, so then you are saying that we should not raise a e-way bill. Now there is a works contract service. We know that classification under Schedule 2. Schedule 2 classifies what is goods, what is services. So under Schedule 2, works contract is treated as a service. So when works contract is treated as a service, what is a works contract? In works contract, you will do construction work. Okay, now you're constructing a big factory machinery, and it's a turnkey project because it's a immovable machinery. So it's a service then. So whatever movement happens, so will you not raise a e-way bill then? And question to Om Krishnom is, if you do intra-state supply and the distance is above 50 kilometers, intra-state only, inter-city, okay, I understand, intra-state, from Mumbai to Pune, you are doing some transaction and the value of the goods is 5 crores and the kilometers is above 50 kilometers. Okay. So then you're saying within intra-state, within a state, there is no requirement of e-way bill. Okay. So now Om Krishnom is changing his answer and he's got the correct thing that, sir, even if it is intra-state supply, still e-way bill is required. The criteria is just 50 kilometers. So if it is intra-state or interstate, doesn't matter. If it is crossing 50 kilometers, we have to raise e-way bill. Okay. Now, with respect to the question of RN Jain, he was saying that if you are doing services, if you are raising a invoice for services, e-way bill is not required. So my question to him and to every one of you is, what is works contract? Works contract is a service. So in case of works contract, will we raise a e-way bill or not raise a e-way bill? Come on, anybody can answer. You will not raise a e-way bill. Bhumika is saying e-way bill will not be raised. RN Jain is saying even in that case, e-way bill will be raised. So what is your criteria then? Your criteria is you will raise a invoice, you will raise a invoice for supply of goods and supply of services. But e-way bill, when will you raise then? Because in first instance, you said that only on supply of services you will raise. Then when I gave a different perspective that in a services, in a services, also there could be supply of goods like works contract services. Other service could be leasing of machinery. You are giving a machinery on lease. The value of the machinery is 1 crore, but your rental is just 1 lakh rupees. So in that case, will you raise e-way bill or no? Because it is a supply of service, but goods is getting involved in that process. So will you raise a e-way bill or no? Supply involving goods, sir. Hence we raise e-way bill. Correct. So the final answer is correct. Supply is given by Swati, that where the supply involves goods, not that it is a supply of services, so it will be exempted. Very, very basic we need to understand, because if we don't understand the basic, we will not be able to get into the concepts clearly. So where it involves supply of goods, let it be it is a supply of service or supply of goods, where the transaction of supply involves the movement of goods, you have to raise e-way bill. Okay. So it could be a works contract service, it could be a rental of equipment service. Various other services are there where goods are involved even in services. So when we say services, our general notion is that it should not involve any goods anywhere. That is not correct. It can involve goods at various instances, but the ultimate classification is given under Schedule 2. That is a classification given for the purpose of identifying whether it is supply of goods or services and then to find out what is the rate which is relevant for it. But we are not concerned with the transaction of supply for e-way bill. For e-way bill, you have to look into that simply whether it involves movement of goods in the transaction. The supply could be anything, but in the transaction, does it involve movement of goods? If you say yes, movement of goods is involved, then raise a e-way bill. If movement of goods is not involved, then don't raise a e-way bill. Okay, so e-way bill is mainly as a control to check that when there is any transfer of goods from one place to another place. Again, emphasizing the word transfer of goods. If there is any transfer of goods, then you will raise a e-way bill. Okay. Now, with that understanding, let's get into e-way bill topic. What is e-way bill? For quick and easy movement of goods across India without any hindrance, this e-way bill is brought up. What do you mean by hindrance then? Before this e-way bill was brought in, we were there under the old GST, old taxation regime before the GST came in, wherein there used to be something called as a check posts. Okay, check posts used to be there at the border of the states, and whenever a goods used to enter inside or go outside from the state, the check post officer will use to check all the vehicles. Now, with the introduction of e-way bill, the idea is the tax should not be lost. So tax will not be lost. So any movement of goods you do, it will be transported through lorry, auto, or any modes, whatever way you're transporting, you have to raise a e-way bill, mention the invoice details and all the relevant details, and then transfer the goods. So for quick and easy movement of goods across India without any hindrance, but practically, let me tell you, that there are officers who are sitting at the borders because they want to still ensure that yes, what you're doing is right or no. Many cases, practically, when we see, there are people who are dealing with e-way bill matters that any kind of movement, what is happening is happening through a officer's vigilance that he will check whether the documents are correct or no. Because a lot of traders still now, even with so much of strictness, they still do these wrong things wherein they will mention more goods, or by mistake also if something is mentioned, then the officer will try to penalize them. So lot of practical issues are still there. That's why there is a procedure of e-way bill mention that what is the goods you have to mention, what is the description you have to mention. That's why we have to understand this. Okay. So where is the power coming for this e-way bill? It is there under only one section under GST law, which is called as Section 68. So Section 68 of the CGST Act, read with the relevant rules, will tell you that what is the e-way bill, why it is required. The primary motive is again to check GST evasion, to check any unscrupulous trade, which means bill though will do for less value, but we will sell for more value. So there is loss to the revenue. Or giving some description in the invoice, but sending different descriptions in the lorry or the tempo. That is also one of the unscrupulous trade practice. Curtailing unauthorized trade, because some goods which are restricted should not be moved. That's why also e-way bill is required. And it also helps in policing in trade of illegal goods. So complete control is happening. Then put to rest the worries of different states that they are losing out of GST revenue, because something gets transported outside the state and GST is not paid in my state. So that's why whenever goods are moving out of the state, also it gets checked. So that's why the state will always have very doubt saying that something is getting produced in my state, but I'm not getting the revenue. To check that also, e-way check post is required. Then to introduce uniformity across the states for seamless generation of e-way bill, introducing uniformity. Okay. So all the states should follow this e-way bill. Earlier, what used to happen? each state had their own system of e-way bill, saying Maharashtra will have its own system, Karnataka will have its own system. Each state will have a different system. So different states, different system used to be there. Now that is gone away. So there is no different state system. The e-way bill is universal across the whole country, and anybody transporting any goods from one state to another state will have a uniform e-way bill portal, and you will mention all the details. When it is to be generated, the e-way bill is to be generated. कब generate करना है? Prior to movement of the goods. Goods को आप जब ट्रांसपोर्टर को देते हो, और ट्रांसपोर्टर जब जर्नी शुरू करता है, उसके पहले आपको ई-वे बिल रेज करना है. बिफोर लोडिंग द गुड्स, इट सेज प्रायर टू मूवमेंट ऑफ गुड. मूवमेंट कब स्टार्ट होगा? वंस यू लोड द गुड्स ऑन टू द conveyance. So before that, you have to raise a e-way bill, which would inform each transaction's details to the tax department and obtain a acknowledgement number. How? Through a e-way bill portal. In the e-way bill portal, you have to mention the details. For each invoice-wise details, you have to mention. Okay, so any movement of goods which is involving, it will be computer linked these days, that when you raise an invoice, we know that even for invoice, the time of supply for raising an invoice is before movement of the goods. So e-way bill also is before movement of the goods. So movement होने से पहले ही आपको invoice और e-way bill दोनों raise करना है. ठीक है. Now, what is it? What is basically a e-way bill? E-way bill is a receipt or a document which is issued by a carrier giving details and instructions relating to the shipment of a consignment of goods. And the details include name of the consigner, name of the consignee, the point of origin of the consignment, because consigner can be in a different location, consignment can be in a different location. Possible? How is it possible? Tell me. When can the bill to ship to, okay, bill to ship to is one transaction, but bill to ship to is very different. Bill to ship to is not when the consigner and the origin of consignment is in different state. That will be in the same place itself. No, that's the wrong answer. Om Krishna, not bill to ship to transaction. Principal agent, yeah, to some extent, principal agent is possible. Think practically. When will the goods get delivered or moved from one place, but you are registered in another place? Is it possible or is it illegal? Multiple state registration, still no, Swati, because even if you have multiple state registrations, doesn't mean that uh, you can raise an invoice from this state, from state A, but deliver from another state. That is not possible. If you are delivering from another state, then you should have registration in that state. Very close you are, but you need to apply your mind that we have to see that there is a requirement of registration in each state. Correct? If you have registration in two states, other states movement, you cannot raise it from your state. You have to raise e-way bill from the state from where you are registered at. Okay. So I will tell you, when can the multiple state, no, Swati, multiple state registration also not possible. It is possible that you have multiple registrations in a state, or even in the case of multiple registration in a state, you cannot actually raise a e-way bill for that other GST number. That other GSTIN number within the state has to raise a e-way bill. If there are branches in a state, okay, if you have two locations, one is head office, one is the warehouse, and the goods are getting moved from the warehouse, Okay. In only in such scenario, it is possible that you are registered because your head office also are registered and the point of origin will be the warehouse. So then that situation, it is possible that the name of the consigner and the registration address of the consigner is different than the point of origin of the consignment. Okay. So in such case, it is possible that name of the consigner and point of origin of the consignment is in different locations, but within a state. And the destination could be different, like how Om Krishna was saying that in case of bill to ship to, the invoice is raised to one person, but the destination is to another person. That is possible. So these are the details which e-way bill will have. What is that e-way bill? If you see in a layman's term, in a normal term, e-way bill is a document which is issued by a carrier giving details and instruction relating to shipment of the consignment of goods. E-way bill is a compliance mechanism wherein, by way of a digital inference, the person causing the movement of goods uploads the relevant information prior to commencement of the goods and generates e-way bill on the GST portal. In other words, e-way bill is an electronic document which is generated on the common portal. So basically, when you say electronic waybill, doesn't mean that what is generated from your computer is electronic waybill, like how we thought about e-invoicing. E-invoicing doesn't mean that just you have to raise an invoice on electronically because your invoice also is electronically. Now, e-way bill is a special portal where your movement, you will mention it on the portal and get a, so once you mention it on the portal, that information will be available to the government. That information will also be available to the consignee, and you are making the transaction public and making the government aware of the transaction and then moving the goods. Taki, once you inform to the government and if you are cancelling the invoice, the government will get to know, see, you have delivered the goods, but you have not raised the invoice correctly. So to give that control is what e-way bill is raised. Okay. Now, where do you raise an e-way bill? E-way bill is an electronic document which is generated on the common portal evidencing movement of goods. What are the prerequisites? The person who generates the e-way bill should firstly be registered. Now, who will be registered? Only he can raise a invoice and he can only raise a e-way bill. So, unregistered person, he will say, sir, I'm not registered under GST, but I'm having movement of goods. So should he register or how will he raise a e-way bill? I'll repeat the question. एक अनरजिस्टर्ड पर्सन है, उसको गुड्स मूव करना है, तो कैसे मूव करेगा? उसका वैल्यू 50,000 से ज्यादा है और उसका ये भी ज्यादा है, किलोमीटर भी 50 किलोमीटर से ज्यादा है और उसको रेस करना है, तो फिर वो कैसे रेस कर पाएगा? Om Krishnom is saying that, sir, enroll him on e-way bill portal with a transit. लेकिन ट्रांजिट किसके लिए है? ट्रांजिट हर अनरजिस्टर्ड पर्सन के लिए है. एनी अदर आंसर्स? It will be raised by the register. Okay, that is a good answer. That okay, if I am unregistered and I'm supplying it to a registered person, so if I am unregistered, I will not raise, but the registered person who is the receiver, he will raise. Okay, वो एक ऑप्शन हो गया. बट अगर सप्लायर को ही रेस करना है, रिसीवर बोलता है मैं नहीं रेस करूंगा क्योंकि ट्रांसपोर्ट तो तुम कर रहे हो, एक्चुअली उसको रेस करना चाहिए, बट इन केस इफ इट डजंट, तो फिर क्या अनरजिस्टर्ड पर्सन रेस कर सकता है? नहीं, correct. So they have to be registered. So basically, a unregistered person cannot raise a e-way bill. Second line, जो हम देखेंगे कि unregistered person definitely cannot raise. But if the transporter is not registered, only for transporter ये condition है that if the transporter is not registered, then it is mandatory for him to get enrolled on the e-way bill by using a unique 15 digit number. GST registration number भी 15 digit है, but this 15 digit number is separate. This 15 digit number will be a transporter ID called as transporter identification number that he will generate. So only a transporter who is unregistered can generate a transit, but a unregistered supplier cannot generate any invoice. An unregistered person cannot raise a e-label. So when an unregistered person gives goods to a conveyance to a transporter, then the transporter will either be registered under GST or he will be having a transit number. But using one of them, they can generate the e-label. Okay. What are the benefits of the e-label? Physical interference is gone. It will facilitate faster movement of goods, improves the turnover time of trucks. वरना क्या होता है, ट्रक को चेक पोस्ट में ज्यादा टाइम के लिए खड़ा होना पड़ता है. अभी उन्होंने कह दिया कि अगर वो कुछ स्पेसिफिक टाइम है, उससे ज्यादा अगर खड़ा होता है 10 मिनट्स का टाइम, अगर आपको किसी जीएसटी ऑफिसर ने 10 मिनट से ज्यादा रोक दिया, तो फिर आपको एक टिकट रेस कर सकते हो. सो दैट इज व्हाट 30 मिनट्स. ओके, 30 मिनट्स का टाइम है that if you are standing at any GST officer's place more than 30 minutes, then you can raise a note on the e-way bill. But transporter इतने unorganized है कि वो नहीं करेंगे. So a registered person whose goods are getting moved, he should be following up with the transporter saying that कहीं मेरा goods रुक गया है तो बताओ, इमीडिएटली मैं चेक पोस्ट पे एक जीएसटी पोर्टल पे रेस करूंगा कि इसने मेरे को रोका है और मुझे जाने नहीं दे रहा है. अनलेस देयर इज अ इशू, क्योंकि उसने अगर इशू आइडेंटिफाई कर दिया है एंड ही सेज कि बस आपका ये प्रॉब्लम है, तो फिर प्रोसीजर आपको अलग से जाना पड़ेगा. बट if there is no issue, then he cannot fiddle with you or check your things more than 30 minutes. Okay. So this helps the turnaround time of the trucks and helps the logistics industry. Then what are the benefits of e-way bill? It enhances supply. Other benefits, it enhances the supply chain efficiency or more efficient now, right? Faster movement of goods. Single e-way bill is valid across the country. So you don't have to generate e-way bill that यहाँ से मैं अगर दिल्ली भेजूंगा तो कहाँ कहाँ टच होके जाएगा, जाएगा हैदराबाद, महाराष्ट्र, सब टच होके जाएगा बिकॉज दैट इज द रूट. तो फिर क्या मुझे हर एक स्टेट पे रेस करना पड़ेगा? नहीं. वन ई-वे बिल विच यू रेस दैट इज वैलिड अक्रॉस ऑल द स्टेट्स. यूनिफॉर्मिटी लेके आ गए हैं, तो आपको हर स्टेट के मूवमेंट के लिए आपको ई-वे बिल रेस करना जरूरी नहीं है. ठीक है. So single e-way is valid across the country and it is easy to generate online, reduce carbon footprint क्योंकि आपको प्रिंट लेने की जरूरत नहीं है, सिर्फ ई-वे बिल नंबर भी मेंशन कर सकते हो, वो काफी है. रिक्वायरमेंट फॉर कंसाइनमेंट वैल्यू एक्सीडिंग 50,000 रुपीज. करेक्ट. सो बिलो 50,000 ई-वे बिल कंपल्सरी नहीं है, ऑप्शनल है. आपको रेस करना है तो आप रेस कर सकते हो. Whenever there is a movement of goods exceeding rupees 50,000 rupees for reasons other than supply. Now, when should you raise a e-way bill? In relation to a supply? If there is some movement of goods which is not in relation to supply also. When can there be instances when second कब आ सकता है? For reasons other than supply. सप्लाई करूंगा तभी तो मूवमेंट करूंगा, बिना सप्लाई कब मूवमेंट कर सकता हूं मैं? Personal purpose, repair, trace. Repair is a thing. Yeah, what other option you're saying? Go down to showroom. Yes, if there is stock transfer. So in case of stock transfer, it is generally not a supply, but yes, it is a schedule one transaction. But go down to showroom transfer within a state with single registration. There you may need a e-way bill. Then if there is any repair where it is not a supply, but you're giving the goods, it will get repaired and come back. There also e-way bill is required. And it can be raised for other than supply, however, movement of goods would be involved. Yeah, that is there. That is definitely there. And principal to agent, yes. So these are the transactions that when you give it for repair, when you transfer the goods, when you give the goods for job work, that the job worker is not the owner. He will send it back to you. So in case of a job worker, it could be treated like that. So these are the instances when the it is not a supply, still e-way bill will have to be raised. So why e-way bill will typically be required? It will be required in multiple instances that it could be in relation to supply, definitely. It could be in relation other than supply, but involving movement of goods like job worker, repair charges, transfer of goods. Those cases also you have to raise an invoice. So any movement of goods we have to, and due to inward supply from unregistered person, when we are moving the goods from principal to agent also, and distinct person transactions also, definitely movement where it is for other than supply, we will have to raise a e-way bill. So अपने को e-way bill should not be restricted only to supply. It involves for a transaction other than supply, and it involves in case of a purchase of any transaction from an unregistered person. So it is not dependent only on supply, it is dependent on the movement of the goods. The registered person who causes movement should furnish generally, but if the supplier is not generating, then the receiver has to generate it. When should he generate it? Before commencement of the movement. Information is to be furnished prior to movement. ऐसा है कि movement हो गया मैं बाद में करूंगा, ऐसा नहीं होगा. Before the movement itself, you have to generate the e-way bill. And e-way bill has to be raised whether the movement is in relation to supply or movement other than supply, जैसे हमने देख लिया है. Now, who causes the movement? If the supplier is registered and he undertakes to transport the goods, okay, in case the recipient undertakes to transport or arrange the goods, because in a transaction, typical business, supplier may sometimes do it or the recipient may do it, or in case the goods are supplied by an unregistered person to a recipient who is registered. These are the instances which can happen. Now, in these three instances, who is causing the movement has to raise the invoice. Now, e-way bill says that who is causing the movement. मतलब कौन मूवमेंट को स्टार्ट कर रहा है. स्टार्ट मतलब कौन मूवमेंट ऑफ द गुड्स को एक्टिवेट कर रहा है. क्योंकि अगर मैं मूवमेंट कर रहा हूं तो हर बार मैं ही रेस करूंगा, ये जरूरी नहीं है. सो इट इज नॉट दैट हु मूव्स द गुड्स. इन्होंने क्या कहा है स्पेसिफिकली, दे हैव नॉट सेड दैट हु मूव्स द गुड, दे हैव टू रेज द ई-वे बिल. हु कॉजेस द मूवमेंट, ही विल हैव टू रेज द ई-वे बिल. हु कॉजेस द मूवमेंट का मतलब है हु इज ट्रिगरिंग द ट्रांजैक्शन. अगर मैंने किसी को बोला मुझे भेजो तो मेरे इंस्ट्रक्शंस पे दे रहा है, करेक्ट. तो अंडर हुज गाइडेंस और इंस्ट्रक्शंस द गुड्स आर मूविंग, दैट इज इंपॉर्टेंट. सो इफ द सप्लायर इज रजिस्टर्ड एंड अंडरटेक्स टू ट्रांसपोर्ट द गुड, then the movement is caused by the supplier. In case the recipient says that आप मुझे भेजो, सप्लायर तो भेजने के लिए तैयार नहीं है, सप्लायर के पास ट्रांसपोर्टर भी नहीं है, मैं अरेंज करूंगा ट्रांसपोर्टर को, आप मुझे गुड्स भेजिए. सो रिसिपिएंट ने कहा सप्लायर को कि आपको भेजना है, तो इन दैट केस द मूवमेंट विल बी कॉज्ड बाय द रिसिपिएंट. तो जनरली क्या होता है, सप्लायर ही इनिशिएट करता है, लेकिन एक्सेप्शनल केसेस में सप्लायर बोलता है मेरा गुड्स रेडी है, आपको लेके जाना है, तो दैट केस मेरा ट्रांसपोर्टर दूंगा या फिर मेरे ट्रक्स को मैं अरेंज करूंगा. इन दैट केस जब मैं रिसीवर ट्रिगर कर रहा हूं, द रिसीवर इज causing the movement, then the movement will be caused by the recipient. And in third instance, where the goods are supplied by an unregistered person, unregistered बोलेगा मुझे तो जीएसटी का पंगा ही नहीं, मैं अनरजिस्टर्ड हूं, आप जो करना है कीजिए, तो फिर the movement shall be said to be caused by such recipient if the recipient known at the time of commencement. करेक्ट, अगर रिसिपेंट पता है आपको कौन करेगा, तो फिर हु विल बी द रिसिपेंट, अगर आपको पता है तो फिर रिसिपिएंट मूवमेंट को ट्रिगर करेगा। ठीक है, सो ये फिर से वही एक्सप्लेनेशन मैं दूसरी तरीके से दे रहा हूं, where the supply is made by a registered seller to a registered buyer, then either party may generate it, because कौन ट्रिगर कर रहा है उसके बेसिस पे डिसाइड होगा। अगर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी सप्लायर का है तो फिर सप्लायर रेज करेगा, अगर रिसीवर का रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है ट्रांसपोर्टर का ट्रांसपोर्टेशन करने का, तो फिर रिसिपिएंट ई-वे बिल रेज करेगा। सो अगर दोनों पार्टी रजिस्टर्ड है तो कोई भी एनी वन ऑफ देम कैन रेज ई-वे बिल। If the supplier is supplying it to an unregistered buyer, तो बायर अनरजिस्टर्ड है और आपके क्राइटेरिया फुलफिल हो रही है कि आपका वैल्यू मोर देन 50,000 है, आपके किलोमीटर मोर देन 50 किलोमीटर है, तो फिर रजिस्टर्ड सेलर को ई-वे बिल रेज करना पड़ेगा। और सप्लायर अनरजिस्टर्ड है, रिसीवर रजिस्टर्ड है, then movement is said to be caused by the registered person and e-way bill is generated by a registered person, even though supplier is एक्चुअली ट्रिगरिंग इट, बट लेकिन वो अनरजिस्टर्ड है, तो इसीलिए रिसिपेंट को ही ई-वे बिल रेज करना पड़ेगा। Person transport causing transportation of goods, correct Bhumika, person causing the transportation of goods will raise the e-way bill, except the last instance where the person causing the transporter is the supplier, but still it will be raised by the recipient because the supplier is unregistered. That's the only one exception. Otherwise, the person causing the transportation of the goods, yes, person causing the movement, which is equal to person causing the transportation of goods, will raise the e-way bill. Consignment value which exceeds 50,000 rupees. Now, what does consignment value exclude, or what does the value of consignment has to be seen here? What is the value which is determined in accordance with provisions of section 15? जो valuation में हमने पढ़ा था, what is the valuation which is determined under section 15? That is a value which is given as a transaction value plus we have some additions, that additions and then some deductions, discount वगैरह, all of that when you determine the value as per section 15, if that value exceeds 50,000, then you have to do it. So you have to add the value, whatever is the recipient pays on my behalf, right? All of that is to be decided to check whether the value of 50,000 is getting fulfilled or not. Unregistered person authorized transporter to e-way bill. So not necessarily if the leg, Abhishek, where one of the person is a registered person, then they will raise the e-way bill. Transporter will generally raise it when both the supplier and recipient are not raising, then he will raise it. Delivery charges also be included. Yes, in section 15 we have said that any incidental or ancillary activity, incidental or ancillary values for the transportation, for the delivery of the goods, if it is involved, then we have to add it. So even delivery charge has to be added. What is declared in an value, what is declared in an invoice or bill of supply or a delivery challan, as the case may be, insured in respect of the said consignment has to be included. And it also includes the central tax, state or unitary tax, integrated tax, and cess charge, if any, in the document. So आपको यहाँ पे taxes का भी value include करना है. Okay, which means that what if I have a consignment for a value of rupees 48,000 rupees. Okay, 48,000 is the value. Now, in this 48,000 rupees is the base value. My taxes milake, it becomes 52,000 rupees. Should I raise the e-way bill or no? So everybody is saying yes, we have to do it. Since all of you are saying yes, nobody has said no. The majority have to go that yes, it has to be raised because it is crossing 50,000 when you add the tax value also. So that is the total value which we will consider. So value of exempt supply of goods where the invoice is issued is respect of both exempt and taxable supplies. So value of exempt supply has to be excluded. Very peculiar. So when the value of exempt supply is there, then we will not add it. So value of exempt supply will not be included. Okay. So if liquor is supplied, then no need to raise bill since it is exempt supply. Correct. Very right. Because exempt supply includes non-taxable supply. So liquor is a non-taxable supply. It is not an exempt supply. So it is a non-taxable supply. That's why exempt supply in the definition says non-taxable supply is also exempt supply. That's why for liquor, you will not raise a e-way bill. What are the other exceptions to this 50,000 rupees? Very few. That e-way bill is required to be generated even if the consignment value is less than 50,000. When you do any interstate transfer of principal to job worker. In this case, they have specifically said interstate transactions. So intrastate transactions of goods by the principal to job worker, e-way bill not required if the value is less than 50,000. But if it is more than 50, you will definitely raise it. So if there is an interstate transfer, not required because 50,000 रुपए interstate आप generally करोगे नहीं अगर कर भी दिया तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. So interstate transfer of goods by the principal to job worker not required. Then interstate transfer of handicraft goods. अगेन जैसे प्रिंसिपल टू जॉब वर्कर गुड्स मूव होते हैं जैसे ही हैंडीक्राफ्ट गुड्स भी मूव होते हैं सो इंटरस्टेट ट्रांसफर ऑफ हैंडीक्राफ्ट गुड्स बाय अ पर्सन exempted from obtaining registration उसको वहां पर भी ई वे बिल की जरूरत नहीं है एंड थर्ड केसेस द रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन और द ट्रांसपोर्टर में अगर इस केस में भी आपको रेस करना है तो आप रेस कर सकते हो कोई दिक्कत वाली बात नहीं है ठीक है then, in the case of build to ship to model, what happens in the case of a build to ship to model? Customer B, okay, supply and the supplier. I have to build to B because B ने मुझे ऑर्डर दिया है लेकिन मैं शिप करूंगा C को ठीक है तो आई विल बिल्ड टू बी एंड शिप टू सी सो क्या दो सप्लाई हो रहे हैं ठीक है यहाँ पे आंसर दिख गया ये आप यही बोलेंगे बट जनरली दो ट्रांजैक्शन हो रहे हैं हमारे दिमाग में रहता है कि मेरे को बिल टू इधर कर रहा हूँ शिप टू इधर कर रहा हूँ और वो वहां से वहां करेगा तो फिर दो ई वे बिल रेज करना चाहिए टिपिकली correct? So generally what you have to do, you have to raise one bill here and that person will raise bill to another year. So you may think that you have to raise one invoice eBay bill here because there is one invoice and another eBay bill over here. Correct? Am I right or wrong? Wrong. Correct. I mean, your answer is correct. That yes, you don't have to raise two e-way bills. Only one is sufficient. That supplier moving the goods to customer. So customer B can raise the e-way bill from Tamil Nadu to customer or the customer C can raise, one of them can raise it. Can be raised by the supplier or customer B, one of them. Anybody, no problem. But generally customer C will not raise because he doesn't know the supplier. He knows only B. So he will not raise. So either the supplier, the original supplier of the goods, or the person on whom I am sending it, he will raise. So yes, in this case, only one e-way bill is sufficient. Two e-way bills are not required. Correct? Let us understand this again. That Ganesh Traders is billing to Maruti Traders, and the goods are getting shipped to Prime Hardware. So who will raise the e-way bill in this case? Ganesh traders will raise, Maruti traders will raise, Ganesh traders or Maruti traders. Yes, either of them can raise it. Not necessarily Ganesh traders only, Bhumika. Ganesh traders, you have to write the complete answer that Ganesh traders or Maruti traders, one of them can raise it. So this is movement from one state to another state. So option is Ganesh traders or option two is Maruti traders. But in this case क्या हो सकता है? Correct. Answer will remain same, either Ganesh or Maruti itself. Good. So you are confident with your answers. So it could be raised by Ganesh traders or Maruti traders. Now we know when e-way bill has to be raised. Now what are the contents in the e-way bill? E-way bill has two parts. One is part A and part B. Part B will have details like GST-IN of the supplier, the place of dispatch, the GST-IN of the recipient. Of course, मेरे detail रहेंगे, मेरा place of dispatch, GST-IN of the recipient, place of delivery, the document number, the document date, value of the goods, HSN code, and reason for the transportation. Okay. डॉक्यूमेंट नंबर बिकॉज इनवॉइस नहीं हो सकता, कभी डिलीवरी चालान भी हो सकता है, दैट्स व्हाई it could be delivery challan number, various things can be there. So document number, document date, value of the goods, that is very important. Key value of the goods here, not value of the supply. What is the value of the goods? What is the HSN code and the reason for transportation? This is to be furnished by the registered person who is causing the movement of goods of the consignment value exceeding 50,000 rupees. Part A, the सप्लायर या रिसिपेंट को फिल करना है, और पार्ट बी जो है टू बी फर्निश्ड बाय द पर्सन हु इज ट्रांसपोर्टिंग द गुड्स, क्योंकि मैंने ट्रांसपोर्टर को दे दिया है, ट्रांसपोर्टर व्हीकल नंबर मेंशन करेगा विच इज जनरली व्हीकल नंबर फॉर गुड फॉर रोड, ट्रांसपोर्टेशन डॉक्यूमेंट, डिफेंस व्हीकल नंबर, टेम्पररी व्हीकल रजिस्ट्रेशन नंबर, तो जो भी है तो वो डॉक्यूमेंट नंबर मेंशन करना है, सिर्फ ट्रांसपोर्टर को इसके व्हीकल नंबर मेंशन करना है, क्योंकि पार्ट ए में मैंने सब कुछ मेंशन कर दिया है. ओके, बट स्टिल समटाइम्स इफ यू आर यूजिंग योर ओन ट्रांसपोर्ट, तो फिर ट्रांसपोर्टर तो है ही नहीं, तो फिर पार्ट बी कौन फिल करेगा? ओन व्हीकल, ओन व्हीकल है, सप्लायर हु ओन्स द व्हीकल में ही ओनर हो व्हीकल का, ट्रांसपोर्टर तो इन्वॉल्व ही नहीं है, तो इट्स अ क्वेश्चन। तो ओके, माय क्वेश्चन इज व्हाट यू आर स्टिल क्लैरिफाइंग कि ओनर तो है ही नहीं व्हीकल का, मैं ही ओनर हूं, तो फिर कौन रेस करेगा? Bhumika is saying that supplier himself will put enter the part B. Pooja is saying yes, supplier itself will enter the part B. Yes. Who is the driver? And that is self. So I have to raise it. Correct. So if I am transporting through my own vehicle, then I have to put my vehicle number over there. Okay. What is the information to be furnished in the e-way bill? What is the information to be furnished by the transporter, or maybe furnished by the transporter, or on an authorization received? अगर supplier बोलता है transporter को, supplier himself can mention it. Or by an e-commerce operator, where the goods to be transported or supplied through such an e-commerce operator, or an authorization received from the consignor. So if the supplier is authorizing the transporter, then the transporter can mention it. If he is transporting through an e-commerce operator, then the goods are to be transported or supplied to an e-commerce operator on an authorization received from the consignor. Consignor अगर e-commerce को देता है एक authorization that he has to enter, then e-commerce can authorize the transport. The consignor can authorize the e-commerce company. Once the goods are ready and transporter details are known, the user are generally entered in Part B. E-way bill can be generated only after entering details in Part B. So you cannot just fill Part A and generate an e-way bill. Part B also has to be fulfilled, has to be entered. Only then you can generate an e-way bill. Both Part A and Part B are mandatory to generate an e-way bill. Same, this is a repetition when goods are transported by a registered person who is causing movement of the good registered person. When it is handed over to the by road and the transporter is causing movement, then part A is the registered person and part B by the transporter. Where the goods is being transported by air, vessel or train, then the registered person, that is either supplier or the recipient. When part B is not mandatory, when part B of the e-way bill will not be required to be furnished when the goods are transported up to 50 kilometers within the state or union territory. So this is saying that up to 50 kilometers, part B when it is not mandatory, when you are moving the goods from the place of business of the consignor to the place of transport, because I don't know the transporter's number. I have to deliver the goods from my place to the consignee's goods. But for that, I need to know the transporter's number. Now, transporter's number I'll get to know once I deliver the goods to the transporter. No, so till then, I'm using my own vehicle. So, from the place of my premises to the transporter's premises, when I move, and that distance is below 50 kilometers, then part B is not required. Still, part A is required. You will not generate an e-way bill, but you can show that I have mentioned the detail in part A of the e-way bill. And again, from the place of the transporter to the final destination, there also, if the distance is below 50 kilometers and that vehicle is not continuing, then also part B is not mandatory. So only in this situation, when you are doing a stopgap, that you are moving the goods from your place to the transporter's place and from the transporter's place back to the consignee's place, in that case, part B is not mandatory. Now, what happens that you have loaded the goods? After that, there is some problem. What could be a problem? In case of breakage of vehicle, हो सकता है ना, पंचर हो गया गाड़ी या फिर खराब हो गया है, रिपेयर करना पड़ता है. Generally, you see the transporter vehicle will be loaded heavily and they can break down in between. So what happens in that case? extend time duration. Okay, just one moment. Various options, yes. Fools extend the duration of the time. Transporter has to update Part B and enter new vehicle number. Correct. Transporter has to assign to a new conveyance, or the transporter has to assign to another transporter. Transporter will have to update the Part B. Yes. All of this is correct answer. So in that case, what happens? In such cases, the consignor or the recipient और द ट्रांसपोर्टर कैन अपडेट द व्हीकल नंबर, बिकॉज जो व्हीकल ब्रेक डाउन हो गया आप उसको ट्रांसफर करके नए व्हीकल में डालोगे, तो यू हैव टू अपडेट द व्हीकल नंबर इन पार्ट बी, बट इट हैज टू बी अपडेटेड विद इन द वैलिडिटी पीरियड. आपको वैलिडिटी खत्म होने के बाद आप अपडेट नहीं कर सकते हो. यू हैव टू अपडेट इट टिल द ई वे बिल इज वैलिड. अपने को ई वे बिल का वैलिडिटी भी आगे पता चल जाएगा. सो टिल द ई वे बिल इज वैलिड यू हैव टू अपडेट इट. Right? So what happens in case of validation? Multiple conveyance against single invoice. So you have to issue delivery challan against each conveyance, and number of e-wables has to be generated is equal to number of delivery challans. Suppose I have multiple delivery challans with one invoice, correct? Like in case of that lift example where I am transporting a lift and I'm giving the transportation to various lorries. Each lorry के लिए एक delivery challan रहेगा. So when that lorries are getting updated, for each delivery challan, I have to raise one e-way bill. So issue delivery challan against each conveyance, and number of e-way bills will be how many delivery challans you generate, that many e-way bills. Second situation is when there is a vehicle breakdown and supplier uses his own vehicle or uses a hired vehicle, then the supplier updates the vehicle details in part B, and where goods are handed over to a goods transport agency, then the transporter updates the details in part B. Transporter may reassign to another transporter in case of breakage and things, and that assigned transporter, new transporter, he can update it in part B. Correct? So one is when there is delivery challan, multiple e-invoices, multiple e-way bills, and in case of a vehicle breakdown, if it is own vehicle, then you know you can update it. If it is transporter's thing, then transporter has to update it or he can assign it to another transporter. But trans assignment will happen by whom? Part A is furnished by consignor, and now you have to assign to another transporter for part B. Then that can happen by the transporter or consignor. And the details of consignment, if it is updated by the transporter himself, then he only can assign. The consignor cannot assign it, because if I have already given the right to the transporter, then I cannot interfere. Then he himself will have to give it to somebody else. I cannot interfere and give it as a assignment to anybody else. Okay. So इसका मतलब क्या है? When who should generate? When the goods are handed over to a transporter, e-way bill, part A of the e-way bill will be filled with fill vehicle details and generate the e-way bill. With the e-way bill can be updated the vehicle number. Now this assignment will happen by that assigned transporter only can reassign, who in turn will mention the vehicle number, because मैंने तो assignment first transporter को दे दिया है. Suppose I don't give the assignment to the transporter, I myself enter it all the details in part B, then I can reassign. तो अगर आपने आपका राइट अपने पास रख दिया है तो फिर आप उसको सब डेलीगेट कर सकते हो. अगर आपने ऑलरेडी डेलीगेट कर दिया है तो फिर उससे आप छीन नहीं सकते हो. देन ही हिमसेल्फ विल हैव टू असाइन इट टू द अदर पर्सन. ठीक है। There is a possibility of consolidated e-way bill. Consolidated e-way bill will be in EWB 02. Normal e-way bill will be in EWB 01. Consolidated e-way bill will be in EWB 02, where multiple consignments are intended to be transported in one conveyance, where multiple consignments bundle करके एक ही conveyance में छोटे 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 consignment से एक कंटेनर के लोड में सिर्फ एक कंसाइनर के गुड्स नहीं आ रहे, मल्टीपल कंसाइनमेंट्स आ रहे हैं, तब सभी के मिला के वो कंसोलिडेटेड ई वे बिल जनरेट कर सकता है। नाउ कंसोलिडेटेड ई वे बिल का बेनिफिट क्या है? इट अलोज हेल्प्स द ट्रांसपोर्टर कि आपको 10 ई वे बिल लेके 10 ई वे बिल की नंबर जरूरी नहीं है, आपको सबको मिला के एक ई वे बिल नंबर आ जाएगा। उसमें क्या होगा? इन दैट यू विल हैव ई वे बिल्स ऑफ मल्टीपल पीपल, right, which the transporter shall transport in one conveyance. And if any consignment does not have e-way bill and value exceeds 50,000, then the transporter will have to generate e-way bill one, because अगर किसी का 10,000 है और किसी का 5 लाख है, but for that consignment he has to generate a consolidated e-way bill, तो फिर अगर सप्लायर ने रेस नहीं किया सेइंग दैट वैल्यू लेस देन 50,000 है, तो फिर ट्रांसपोर्टर रेस कर सकता है। एंड कंसोलिडेटेड ईवेबल डज नॉट हैव इंडिपेंडेंट वैलिडिटी पीरियड। ऐसा नहीं कि एक को तो दूर जाना है, एक को पास जाना है, तो फिर द वैलिडिटी पीरियड गेट्स एक्सटेंडेड। नहीं, ईवेबल टू द कंसोलिडेटेड ईवेबल इज नॉट अ सब्स्टिट्यूट, इट्स ओनली अ डॉक्यूमेंट टू कैरी बाय द ट्रांसपोर्टर। सबका वैलिडिटी पीरियड ईवेबल वन में जैसे मेंशन किया वैसा ही रहेगा। ओके, सो ईवेबल में जो डिटेल्स है that itself will be relevant. So individual e-way bill का validity period, individual e-way bill का जो relevant destination है, that only will be valid. Of course, e-way bill 2 is optional, not mandatory. अगर ट्रांसपोर्टर को चाहिए कि वो 10 e-way bill नहीं लेके एक e-way bill लेके जाना है, तब it will be that a consolidated e-way bill, और वो भी optional है, ये compulsory नहीं है। So in case of multiple consignment, limit of 50,000 is for individual consignment. Yes, still it is for individual consignment itself. So it is not for a whole consignment together. It is still for individual consignment itself. What are the other attributes? Data submitted on e-way bill can be used to auto-populate data for GST returns. क्योंकि e-way bill में you're giving the suppliers details and everything, so that will be auto-populated in the GSTR1, ताकि आपको फिर से दोबारा एंट्री करने की जरूरत नहीं पड़े। Now, when can you cancel the e-way bill? You can cancel the e-way bill within 24 hours of generation. Okay, within 24 hours you can generate it, provided the goods are not transported or goods are not verified in transit. मतलब अगर वेरिफिकेशन हो गया तो फिर आप कैंसिल नहीं कर सकते हो। इफ इट इज बीइंग वेरीफाइड देन हाउ विल यू कैंसिल? मतलब आपने मूवमेंट कर दिया है और ऑफिसर ने इंटरसेप्ट करके चेक भी कर लिया है, तो फिर क्या कैंसिल करोगे? बिकॉज यू हैव ऑलरेडी मूव्ड द गुड्स। तो इसका मतलब अगर आप कैंसिल करना चाहते हो तो मतलब आपने कुछ गलती किया है, उसके लिए यू हैव टू go with the penalty provisions what the officer will charge, correct? But once the officer has intercepted, it is taken, saying that it is checked, then you cannot cancel it. Any cancellation should be happening before that or before transportation of the goods. Now क्या मैं edit कर सकता हूँ e-way bill को? I can edit e-way bill, saying that instead of mentioning vehicle number 423 I mentioned 123. Can I edit it? I cannot edit it. Edit option नहीं है, so I cannot edit the e-way bill. When is the e-way bill deemed to be accepted? मैंने तो सप्लाई कर लिया है, तो फिर रिसीवर को एक्सेप्ट करना है या नहीं करना है? मैंने आपको सप्लाई किया नहीं है लेकिन आपका जीएसटी नंबर यूज कर लिया है, तो आपको एक्सेप्ट करना है या रिजेक्ट करना है? कुछ टाइम लिमिट है? If an error or omission occurs in a e-way bill, you have to cancel it. You cannot edit it. You have to cancel it. No other option. Okay. So the question on what do you do if there are 10 conveyance carrying goods at the same time to the same client? Can we raise one bill or should I raise separate bills for each conveyance? Separate. Each conveyance separate e-way bill. You cannot raise one e-way bill for the separate vehicles. You have to raise separate delivery challan and you have to raise separate e-way bill. सो अगर ई-वे बिल रेस कर दिया है, अब उसको एक्सेप्टेंस करना की जरूरत नहीं है. इट इज डीम्ड टू बी एक्सेप्ट व्हेन विद इन 72 hours. करेक्ट, 3 days. विद इन 3 days द रिसीवर अगर उसको देखना है और रिजेक्ट करना है तो वो ऑनलाइन जाके रिजेक्ट कर सकता है. अगर कुछ नहीं करता है तो इट इज डीम्ड एज एक्सेप्टेंस. 72 hours इज द लिमिट. अगर उसको रिसीवर को कुछ करना है, जनरली रिसीवर विल नॉट डू बिकॉज उसको इतना टाइम नहीं रहता है कि मेरा एक एक बिल में चेक करूं, बिकॉज सप्लायर ने रेस कर दिया है तो मेरे को ही होगा. बट अगर ऐसा कुछ लगता है तो उसको सिर्फ 72 hours है कैंसिल करने के लिए फ्रॉम अ रिसिपिएंट्स पर्सपेक्टिव, और द टाइम ऑफ डिलीवरी ऑफ द गुड्स विच एवर इज अर्लियर. सो अगर उसके पहले डिलीवर हो गया तो खत्म हो गया ई वे बिल का वैलिडिटी. अगर लंबा ड्यूरेशन है तो 3 days, और बिफोर डिलीवरी विच एवर इज अर्लियर द रिसिपिएंट कैन कैंसिल इट. Then validity of EV period, we know this very simple, up to 20 kilometers 1 day, and for every 20 kilometers apart thereof, one additional day. Okay, this is for which one? For over dimensional cargo and multimodal shipment, wherein the cargo size is very big. जो नॉर्मल ट्रांसपोर्ट व्हीकल्स हैं उससे भी एक्स्ट्रा व्हीकल, जैसे हम देखते हैं हाईवे वगैरह पे बड़े बड़े पाइपलाइंस वगैरह लेके जाते हैं, विंड मिल वगैरह लेके जाते हैं जहां पे बड़ा बड़ा लॉरीज रहता है. इन दैट केस इट इज कॉल्ड एज ओवर डायमेंशनल कार्गो. वहां जहां पे अप टू 20 किलोमीटर 1 day लिमिट है, फॉर एवरी 20 किलोमीटर अपार्ट देयर ऑफ वन एडिशनल डे मिल जाएगा. एंड फॉर नॉर्मल where it is not a over dimensional cargo या फिर multimodal transportation नहीं है, then up to 200 kilometers 1 day. वन ट्रांसपोर्ट व्हीकल का कितना चला सकता है? दे कैन ट्रैवल राइट. अगर 50 किलोमीटर पर आवर की स्पीड भी पकड़े ट्रैफिक वगैरह मिला के, इन 5 hours दे कैन कवर क्लोजली वेरी गुड अराउंड 200 to 50 kilometers. तो उन्होंने एक्स्ट्रा ही दिया है सेइंग दैट अप टू 200 kilometers वैलिडिटी पीरियड इज 1 year 1 day, and for every 200 kilometers one additional day. Then what is the relevant date or the validity period? Relevant date means the date when the e-way bill has been generated, and the period of validity will be counted from the time at which the e-way bill has been generated, and each day shall be counted as a period expiring at the midnight of the day immediately following the day of generation. Yeah, you know this, right? But just we'll take some examples. E-way bill is generated on the 1st of April 2018 at 5 p.m. for transportation of cargo which covers distance of 90 kilometers. So इसका validity period कब तक होगा? It will be valid for 1 day up to 200 kilometers, or the 1 day starts from the midnight of the 1st of April, which means the validity period will expire on the 2nd of April. Till 2nd of April you have effectively क्या है? You have 1.5 day. Now, if it is for a distance of 190 kilometers, still it will be 1 day, which means by the end of 2nd April. And so if you plan better and if you generate at the end of say 14th March, then you are a fool. Because had you generated it on the 14th March in the morning, then you would have got this day also and the next day also. But you have generated the late night. तो फिर it starts 2 मिनट के बाद आपका वैलिडिटी पीरियड एक दिन में खत्म हो जाएगा. It will end on the 15th of March, right? So you have to be careful that you generate it when at a proper time. शोएब, इसका मतलब क्या होता है कि वैलिडिटी पीरियड ऑफ ईवेबल, जैसे यहाँ पे टाइम दिया है उसको देखिए. 1 अप्रैल को मैं 5 बजे को शाम को, पीएम मतलब शाम हो गया, अगर शाम को रेस करता हूँ तो ईवेबल का वैलिड कब होता है? 24 घंटे, क्योंकि अप टू 200 किलोमीटर वैलिडिटी इज 1 डे. सो ये नॉर्मल ट्रांसपोर्टर की बोलता हूँ, एमएमटी का तो छोड़ दीजिए, वो 20 किलोमीटर रिप्लेस हो जाएगा. नॉर्मल व्हीकल के लिए 200 किलोमीटर डिस्टेंस के लिए 1 डे का वैलिडिटी है. ये 1 डे कब खत्म होता है? अगर मैंने 1 अप्रैल को खत्म किया है तो फिर 2 अप्रैल 5 बजे, ऐसा नहीं है. 1 अप्रैल को आपने जनरेट किया तो वैलिडिटी पीरियड आज की रात से शुरू होगा. 1 अप्रैल की रात से शुरू होगा 24 घंटे तक. सो 1 अप्रैल 5 PM भी आप रेस कीजिए ईवेबल, उसका वैलिडिटी पीरियड अगले दिन रात तक होगा. तो 1 अप्रैल का जो ईवेबल है उसका वैलिडिटी पीरियड कब तक है? उसका वैलिडिटी पीरियड है 2 अप्रैल के रात तक. और अगर वो ही मैंने 1 अप्रैल को एक जनरेट किया जिसका स्टार्ट द प्लेस ऑफ मूवमेंट और प्लेस ऑफ डिलीवरी 190 किलोमीटर है, तब भी 2 अप्रैल को ही होगा, क्योंकि उन्होंने अप टू 200 किलोमीटर तक एक दिन बोल दिया गया है. तब अगर मैं, तो यहाँ पे हम समझ गए. यहाँ थर्ड केस में देखिए, अगर मैंने 11:58 रात के 11:58 को ईवेबल रेस किया है, तो फिर द फर्स्ट डे वुड एंड ऑन 12th मिडनाइट ऑफ 15th March, और सेकेंड डे विल एंड ऑन द 12th मिडनाइट ऑफ द 16th March. तो फिर यहाँ पे क्या होगा? मुझे द टाइम लिमिट क्या है? The means the date on which the e-waybill has been generated and the period of balance should be counted from the time at which the e-waybill has been generated, and each day shall be counted as a period expiring at midnight of the day immediately following the day of generation of the e-waybill. तो यहाँ पे 14 मार्च 15 मार्च के रात तक मेरा e-waybill का वैलिडिटी होगा. सो अगर मैं 14 तारीख को कुछ रेस करता हूँ अप टू 200 किलोमीटर के लिए, तब वो 15 मार्च को खत्म हो जाएगा. अगर मैं 14 तारीख को सुबह रेस करता हूँ तो मुझे 14 का भी टाइम मिलेगा और 15 तारीख का भी टाइम मिलेगा. तो हमें ईवेबल स्मार्ट तरह से प्रिपेयर करना चाहिए, जितना हो सके दिन में प्रिपेयर कीजिए, ताकि उस दिन भी मिलेगा आपको और अगले दिन का भी टाइम मिलेगा. ताकि रास्ते में भी अगर कुछ खराब हो गया व्हीकल, तो फिर आपको चेंज करने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी. वो रिपेयर होके टाइम भी ले लिया तो फिर आपको पूरा दिन मिलेगा ईवे बिल रेस करने के लिए. वो ईवे बिल का वैलिडिटी रहेगा आपको. क्लियर शोएब? ओके. वैलिडिटी पीरियड एक्सटेंड कर सकते हैं, हाँ एक्सटेंड कर सकते हैं बाय द कमिश्नर थ्रू नोटिफिकेशन, और एक्सटेंशन बाय द ट्रांसपोर्टर. अगर वो बोलता है कि नेचुरल कैलामिटी, कुछ बीच में फॉल्स आ गए, बीच में कुछ लैंडस्लाइड्स आ गए, तब भी आप उसको एक्सटेंशन कर सकते हो. वैलिडिटी विल बी एक्सटेंडेड विद इन 8 आवर्स फ्रॉम द डेट ऑफ एक्सपायरी. एक्सपायरी के 8 घंटे पहले तक आप रेट एक्सटेंड कर सकते हो. प्रॉपर ऑफिसर, यस, commissioner will be the proper officer for this purpose. What are the other important aspects? E-waybill is not valid for movement of goods without vehicle number. मतलब पार्ट बी में अगर आप व्हीकल नंबर मेंशन नहीं करते हो, खाली छोड़ देते हो, तो फिर वो ई-वे बिल वैलिड नहीं होगा. इफ देयर इज अ मिस्टेक, इनकरेक्ट और रॉन्ग एंट्री, देन इट कैन नॉट बी एडिटेड. Only option is somebody was asking this question. Yes, you have to cancel it and generate a new e-way bill. अगर मैंने खराब होगी मेरी गाड़ी, दूसरी गाड़ी ला ली, दूसरी गाड़ी भी खराब हो गई, तीसरी गाड़ी ला दी, वो भी खराब हो गई, चौथी में डालना है, तो फिर क्या इतनी बार अलो करेगा मुझे ई वे बिल अपडेट करने के लिए? हाँ सर, नो सर। स्वाति सिंह नहीं, अगर अपडेट नहीं कर तो फिर कितना टाइम लिमिट रहेगा स्वाति आपके हिसाब से? बट कितना टाइम स्वाति, अगर 3-4 बार हो गया तो फिर एक्चुअल में प्रैक्टिकली हो सकता है। पूजा इज सेइंग एनी नंबर ऑफ टाइम्स। यस, पूजा जैसे बोल रही है कि यू कैन अपडेट एनी नंबर ऑफ टाइम्स, कोई लिमिट नहीं ही है। ई वे बिल में बी अपडेटेड विथ व्हीकल नंबर एनी नंबर ऑफ टाइम्स, कुछ रेस्ट्रिक्शन नहीं है। लेटेस्ट नंबर जो है वो ही वैलिड होगा, एंड जो लेटेस्ट व्हीकल नंबर है वो व्हीकल नंबर के साथ मैच होना चाहिए। ऐसा नहीं कि आपने लेटेस्ट तो डाल दिया लेकिन पुरानी गाड़ी में ही चल रहा है, ऐसा नहीं हो सकता। अगर आपने लेटेस्ट नंबर अपडेट कर दिया तो फिर वही व्हीकल में गुड्स रहने चाहिए। Then, if multiple invoices are issued by the supplier, that is for movement of goods of more than one invoice, that is, multiple e-way bills have to be generated. That is, for each invoice, one e-way bill has to be generated, irrespective of the fact that same or different consignors or consignees are involved. सेम लोकेशन और डेस्टिनेशन एक ही है तो फिर मैं एक ही ई वे बिल रेज करता हूँ, नहीं चलेगा। आपको हर एक इनवॉइस के लिए एक ई वे बिल रेज रहना चाहिए। मल्टीपल इनवॉइसेस कैन नॉट बी क्लब टुगेदर इन वन ई वे बिल, क्योंकि रिसिपेंट अलग है, करेक्ट? तो फिर आप उसको कंसोलिडेट नहीं कर सकते हो। ट्रांसपोर्टर मल्टीपल ई वे बिल्स को इकट्ठा करके एक कंसोलिडेट ई वे बिल बनाएगा, वो अलग बात होगी, लेकिन आपको सभी इनवॉइसेस इकट्ठा करके एक ई वे बिल नहीं बना सकते। However, after generating all these e-way-bills, one consolidated e-way-bill can be prepared by the transporter. वो consolidated e-way-bill EWB2 वो ट्रांसपोर्टर बनाएगा, आपको हर एक इनवॉइस, हर एक डिलीवरी चलान के लिए सेपरेट इनवॉइस ई-वे-बिल रेज करना चाहिए। थक गए कि सबको ऐड करके एक बना देंगे, नहीं चलेगा। एंड व्हाट इज ई-वे-बिल जनरेटर? एक स्टेट दूसरे स्टेट में जा रहा है, फिर तीसरे स्टेट में जा रहा है, फिर फोर्थ स्टेट में पहुंचेगा, तो फिर क्या हर एक स्टेट के लिए मेरे को ई-वे-बिल बनाना पड़ेगा? नहीं बनाना पड़ेगा। वन ई-वे-बिल इज वैलिड फॉर मल्टीपल स्टेट्स। लोकेशन ऑफ स्टार्ट से डेस्टिनेशन तक आप मेंशन कीजिए, रास्ते में कितने भी स्टेट आने दीजिए, चलेगा। हर एक स्टेट के चेक पोस्ट को आप बताइए, सेम ई-वे-बिल बनाएंगे, आपको हर एक स्टेट के लिए सेपरेट ई-वे बिल बनाने की जरूरत नहीं है। व्हेन ई-वे बिल इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड, स्पेसिफिक गुड्स का लिस्ट है, इन चीजों के लिए आपको ई-वे बिल की जरूरत नहीं है। देन इन स्पेसिफिक केसेस इसमें कुछ समझाने वाली बात नहीं है। व्हेन स्पेसिफिक थिंग्स आर देयर व्हिच आर आउटसाइड जीएसटी, जैसे किसी ने अल्कोहलिक लिकर बोला था, हाँ, उन केसेस में आपको ई वे बिल रेज करने की जरूरत नहीं है। देन डॉक्यूमेंट्स एंड डिवाइस व्हाट यू हैव टू कैरी। ई वे बिल तो आप रेज करोगे, साथ रेज किया तो आप उसको साथ में लेके जाओ या नंबर लेके जाओ। देन यू हैव टू कैरी द डॉक्यूमेंट, दैट इज द इनवॉइस, डिलीवरी चालान और बिल ऑफ सप्लाई। इफ ई वे बिल इज इन फिजिकल फॉर्म तो फिर दैट इज फाइन, या फिर आप इलेक्ट्रॉनिक फॉर्म में भी ले सकते हैं, क्योंकि उसमें क्यूआर कोड रहता है, तो वो क्यूआर कोड का कॉपी भी ट्रांसपोर्टर साथ लेके जा सकता है। और अगर आर एफ आई डी है, जैसे हर एक ट्रांसपोर्ट व्हीकल्स में आरएफआईडी होता है, जो हमने फास्ट टैग जो टैग कर लिया, उस फास्ट टैग में मतलब क्या है, वहां पे एक क्यूआर कोड है, करेक्ट। तो वो ऑब्जॉर्व करके आपके व्हीकल डिटेल्स को चेक पोस्ट पे दे, टोल पे दे देता है। उसी तरह उस आर एफ डी आई डी में भी आप ई वे बिल के डॉक्यूमेंट्स एम्बेड कर सकते हो। If e-way is applicable to the taxpayer, then the QR code having an embedded IRN may be produced instead of physical invoice. अगर ई इनवॉइस है तो ई इनवॉइस में भी आपका क्यूआर कोड रहेगा, उसमें भी आप एम्बेड कर सकते हो। देन वेरिफिकेशन ऑफ डॉक्यूमेंट्स जो इंटरसेप्ट करेगा, समरी रिपोर्ट उसको 24 घंटे में करना पड़ेगा और फाइनल रिपोर्ट 3 दिन के अंदर देना पड़ेगा। 3 दिन जो एक्सटेंड हो सकता है। एंड व्हेन फिजिकल वेरिफिकेशन इज डन एट वन प्लेस इन वन स्टेट, नो फर्दर वेरिफिकेशन इन द सेम स्टेट। की मतलब ऐसा नहीं कि मैंने एक स्टेट एंटर किया और बाहर निकल रहा हूँ तो दो चेक पोस्ट है, दोनों चेक पोस्ट वाले मुझे परेशान करेंगे, नहीं। व्हेन फिजिकल वेरिफिकेशन हैपनिंग इन वन विद इन अ स्टेट, एक बार हो गया तो सेम स्टेट में इंटरसेप्ट नहीं कर सकते, तो दूसरे स्टेट में कर सकता है, लेकिन सेम स्टेट में दोबारा नहीं कर सकता है। लेकिन उसको मिलता है इंफॉर्मेशन कि भाई ये तो सबको पता है, तो फिर वो कुछ ऐड कर दिया रास्ते में, अगर ऐसा कुछ इंफॉर्मेशन मिल गया है तो भी फिर वो इंटरसेप्ट कर सकते हैं। देन आपके ईवे बिल कब ब्लॉक हो जाएगा, जब अ पर्सन हु इज डूइंग अ कॉम्पोजिशन स्कीम हैज नॉट फर्निश्ड द स्टेटमेंट ऑफ पेमेंट फॉर 2 consecutive क्वार्टर्स। ऐसा नहीं कि आप जीएसटी रिटर्न्स में घपला करो और आपको ईवे बिल करते रहो, नहीं। ईवे बिल आपका ब्लॉक हो जाएगा अगर कॉम्पोजिट कॉम्पोजिट स्कीम वाला है और उसने 2 क्वार्टर के लिए पेमेंट नहीं किया है, क्योंकि उसका रिटर्न तो ईयरली जाता है लेकिन पेमेंट हर क्वार्टरली जाता है। तो ऐसे 2 क्वार्टर के लिए उसने डिटेल्स नहीं दिया तो फिर वो ई वे बिल ब्लॉक हो जाएगा। या फिर जो नॉर्मल स्कीम है उसने 2 consecutive मंथ नहीं, क्योंकि क्वार्टरली पेयर्स भी है अभी, तो अगर मंथली पेयर है और 2 मंथ के लिए उसने रिटर्न्स फर्निश नहीं किया है, या फिर 2 पीरियड के लिए, जैसे क्वार्टरली पेयर से 2 क्वार्टर के लिए उन्होंने फाइल नहीं किया है, या फिर उन्होंने GSTR 1 2 महीने के लिए या 2 क्वार्टर के लिए सब फर्निश नहीं किया है, या फिर किसी का रजिस्ट्रेशन सस्पेंड हो गया है, तो फिर वो ई वे बिल रेज नहीं कर सकता है, उसे कमिश्नर के पास स्पेसिफिक परमिशन लेनी पड़ेगी। ई वे बिल ब्लॉक फॉर रेजिंग बट नॉट फॉर बीइंग एंटर्ड एज अ रेसिपिएंट। मैं ई वे बिल रेज नहीं कर सकता हूँ, लेकिन सप्लायर मुझे कुछ सप्लाई कर रहा है तो वो कर सकता है, क्योंकि इन दैट केस आई एम अ रेसिपिएंट, उसे प्रॉब्लम नहीं आएगा। Then other aspects, when a vehicle has been intercepted and detained more than 30 minutes, the transporter may upload the information regarding detention। मतलब दोनों तरफ से टाइट है, आपको ई वे बिल रेस करना है और वहां के चेक पोस्ट को रोक के सोना नहीं है, उसको 30 मिनट्स में खत्म करना है अपना काम, वरना आप रेस कर सकते हो कि भाई मेरा इंफॉर्मेशन अपलोड नहीं हुआ है। परमिशन फॉर अलोइंग टू यूज ई वे बिल कैन बी गिवन ऑन रिक्वेस्ट बाय कमिश्नर। ओके, सो दीज आर द मेन एस्पेक्ट्स ऑन ई वे बिल। हम एमसीक्यू अभी ले या फिर लास्ट में ले, बिकॉज वी हैव टू कवर द टॉपिक ऑफ पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्स। So should we cover payment of tax and at the end we'll take MCQ so that it will be better? Of course, break तो है यहाँ पे, but I'm asking after the break. MCQ at the last. ठीक है. So we'll take a quick break. Then we'll go to payment of taxes. Then we'll continue with the MCQ of e-way bill. It's hardly, yeah, 4:35 we can come back with. अभी विजिबल है? Okay. So we'll discuss on payment of taxes. So we know basic things like whatever taxes is being paid, CGST goes to the central government, SGST and UTGST goes to the state government, IGST goes to the central government, then it is distributed amongst the center and the state. So these are the main revenues, what taxes we pay. And after this, what happens? We pay the TDS payment and TCS payment. TDS and TCS is not a separate levy. It is basically CGST and SGST. Instead of paying in the returns, it is paid through a advance mode through TDS and TCS. That TDS is paid when somebody has to make payment to other person. So tax has been deducted and remitted to the government. The intention is very simple that if the other person doesn't file the return, the government can get his details to this TDS payer, and this person's data is captured to check whether he is disclosing his turnover correctly or no. Similarly, in TCS also, that TDS is basically when you make transaction with the government, and TCS is when you make transactions with e-commerce. So we have a separate chapter on this TDS and TCS. There we will understand in detail, but now you should understand that TDS and TCS is not a separate levy. It is just a mechanism which most of the governments use so that they can collect the taxes in advance. Okay, so that is on TDS and TCS payment. Apart from this, what other revenue goes to the government is interest, penalty payments, any amount of fees what we pay, late payment fees, and any other payment. All of this goes to the government. Now, once you do a registration, okay, once you are registered under GST, you will see that you will have in your GST portal some electronic ledgers which will open up. Now, these ledgers all called as electronic ledgers or e-ledgers. Now, you have electronic cash ledger and electronic credit ledger. These are prepared and updated by the taxpayer. So, if you make any payment to the government, the cash ledger gets populated. And when you make payment of any taxes, cash ledger gets reduced. So that is electronic cash ledger. Then when you file your returns, claim the credit and file your returns, then your electronic credit ledger gets auto-populated. So your electronic credit ledger will be the summary of the credits what you have claimed. Of course, GSTR 2B and things like that, but ultimately the electronic credit ledger gets auto-populated from your GSTR 3B. Whatever GSTR 3B you file, the input from that gets added up and your electronic credit ledger is auto-populated. So this is prepared by the taxpayer. Then prepared on the basis of your returns is once you file your returns, you will show some liability. That's when the electronic liability register gets populated because that is your liability. So once you show your liability in the returns, the electronic liability register gets updated. And once you make the payment, that gets offset. So based on your returns, you have electronic liability register, and based on your payments, electronic cash ledger, and based on your credit, electronic credit ledger gets updated. Now, what we'll study in this chapter is payment of tax, interest and penalty. Section 49 covers it. Maintenance of 3 electronic credit ledgers. How is the utilization of ITC happening? That is there in section 49A. Then 49B says order of utilization of credit. Section 50 talks on interest of delayed payment of taxes. 51 talks on circumstances when TDS becomes mandatory. 52 talks on circumstances when TCS is collected by the e-commerce company. 53 talks about transfer of input tax credit, and 53A transfer of certain amounts. So this is what is the agenda in this chapter. Liability on supply is determined how it is determined in the monthly returns. This return, when the GST started, it was mentioned as GSTR 3. but they couldn't implement GSTR3. So GSTR3B became the return, and that is what is continuing till today, that GSTR3B itself has become the main return. And payment for this can be made through various modes. We can make the payment of the liability through your electronic cash, or you can make the payment through credit. Liability not paid completely in cash, it is paid partly in cash and partly from credit. The provisions of GST are made applicable to IGST via section 20. So whatever we'll discuss in CGST, all these sections will be replicated in the IGST as well. Okay. So the rules, if you have to overview the rules, because the rules guide on most of the things. So the rules guide that Rule 85 is relevant. Rule 85 says that uh, electronic liability register will be maintained. In what format it will be maintained? Rule 85 says it will be maintained in GST PMT01. So your liability register is in PMT01. PMT02 is your electronic credit ledger, and electronic cash ledger is there in PMT05. So whatever we maintain, those forms has to be specified in the rules. So rule 85, 86, 87, these give you the rules and the format of these ledgers. Maintenance of taxpayer is taxpayer-wise electronic ledgers. So each taxpayer-wise electronic ledgers are maintained in his portal. The tax liability register is liability of a taxable person in the form of tax, interest, fees, separate columns you'll see. And on top of that, you'll see each act wise CGST, tax, interest, fees, and penalties there. SGST, tax, interest, fees, and penalty. And IGST, tax, interest, fees, and penalty. And again, cess, tax, interest, fees, and penalty. So you will have that tax liability register is maintained, saying that whatever liability has to be paid through returns, if not through returns, if through a order, what has been determined, whatever we have to pay through adjudication, all of that will come in your electronic liability register. Then whatever credit we claim will go to our input tax credit ledger, the electronic credit ledger, all your inputs gets added up there. Then your cash ledger, whatever payments we make will get added up in the electronic cash ledger. Again, all of this will be headwise. Details in this ledgers will get auto-populated from the returns file. In cash ledgers, it will be populated from the payment what we make. Both the ITC register and the cash ledger will be utilized by the taxpayer for discharging the liabilities. These ledgers will be updated on a real-time basis by the taxpayer, and balance, if any, will be refunded. So if you have excess amount in your cash ledger, you can ask the refund. So that is the electronic cash ledger. And in the credit ledger, if there's anything, you can claim the refund, but it is restricted. Not everyone can claim the refund. It is restricted to certain specified persons, as we had discussed earlier, who can claim the refund. Cash ledger is like your bank account, you can claim refund, but credit ledger, who can claim the refund? Mm, yes. Shoaib, yes. One more category. You mentioned two category of people who can claim refund. There's one more category. Others who can guess, please. On who can claim the refund, whatever is there in your electronic cash ledger. Anybody? Now, who can claim the refund of the balance in your credit ledger? You have so much of credit. So, what will you do with it? Use to purchase goods, use to pay outward tax. No. So, electronic credit ledger, you purchase goods, okay, and you have not sold goods. So, credit will be lying in your electronic credit ledger, correct? Or you have purchased at a high value and you have sold at a low value. So, the credit will lie. So, can you claim this credit, what is lying there as a refund? You cannot claim. So, who can claim this refund then? So, two options. What Shoaib has given is if a person is a zero rated supplier doing any transaction of zero rated supply, which is a exporter. So a person who is exporting goods can claim this refund, or a person who is supplying it to a SEZ unit, they can claim a refund. Correct. So these are the two categories. But there is one more category who can claim refund in the electronic credit ledger. Who is that? No, closing down business or shifting from regular to composition, still they cannot claim the refund. So these people cannot claim the refund. So there are only three category of people who can claim the refund. Yes, Pooja, you're right. They are called as inverted duty structure payers, where your sale is lower rate and your purchase is at a higher rate. Your rate in the sense rate of tax, not the value. Okay. When you purchase goods at 18% and 12%, but your sales are at 5%, then you are at a inverted duty rate wherein your purchase rate is higher and your sale rate is lower. So that is called as inverted duty structure payers. Such taxpayers can claim the refund. Okay, so two taxpayers who can claim refund is exporters and suppliers to SEZ. Third is a inverted duty structure person who can claim the refund. So these are three people who can claim the refund. So your electronic credit ledger cannot be claimed as a refund by everyone. Only these category of people can claim the refund. And these ledgers, electronic cash ledger, electronic credit ledger, and liability register don't have to wait. It is all updated on a real-time basis itself. Balance may be refunded like how we had discussed. What are the modes of payment of taxes? Payment of tax, first is your electronic cash ledger. You can make the payment through one or any of the payment modes, what we will discuss now through cash, NEFT, RTGS, credit card, debit card, that can be made. So whatever that payment we make will add to the credit in your electronic credit ledger. That's why there is an add sign here. And whatever TDS is deducted by the government or TCS is deducted by the e-commerce operator, that deduction they will give it to you. Because they are giving it to you instead of in your bank account, they will give it as a credit in your electronic cash ledger. So that will also get added. So any payments what you make and any payments made by a third party on your behalf with your GST number, that also gets added to your electronic cash ledger. Okay. And what are the debits which happen? Any payment of tax from the electronic cash ledger, you can make payment of everything. You can make payment of tax, interest, penalty, fees, or any other amount. So all of these payments can be made from your electronic cash ledger. Okay. So electronic cash ledger is like your bank account. From this, there is no restriction. You can make any amount of payment. So please note these down. Very, very important. What you can make payment from your electronic cash ledger. You can make payment of tax, can make payment of interest, can make payment of penalty, fees, or any other amount. When they say any other amount, the limit is kind. Any kind of thing can be made payment. It's like a wallet, correct? Like how you have a wallet, this is also like a wallet. Okay. But your electronic credit ledger, the credit in the electronic credit ledger will come from where all the input tax credit. So whatever returns you're filing, in that whatever credit you will claim, that will be your input tax credit. So credits what you're claiming gets added as a input tax credit on the self-assessment basis. That is whatever GST or 3B you file, credits on that will get added to the electronic credit ledger, and the debits will be whatever payments you make. Now, electronic cash ledger, I said any payment can be made, but in electronic credit ledger, you can make only payment of output tax. You cannot make payment of your interest, any penalty, or any fees from your electronic credit ledger. You can make payment of only output tax from this. Okay. Your reverse charge mechanism also, you cannot make payment from your electronic credit ledger. For the reverse charge, the liability has to be paid from the electronic cash ledger itself. I have so much of credit, I will utilize this for payment of RCM, not possible. Your reverse charge mechanism payment has to happen from the cash ledger, cannot happen from the credit ledger. Clear? Very important. Here only one thing, here that is unlimited. From your electronic credit ledger, you can only make payment of your tax, the to output tax. Electronic cash ledger is a summary of all deposits made by a taxpayer. It is like a bank account, or like we put by RN that it is a wallet which is there with the government. Date of credit is on receipt of CIN from the collecting banker. That is, if you make payment to the banker, banker will make the payment to the government. That is the date of credit. Date of credit in the treasury of the state government or central government is deemed to be the date of debit in the electronic cash ledger. Whence the amount goes from the your electronic credit ledger to the government's treasury, that is when it is treated as a debit. Just by being in your cash ledger doesn't mean it's government's money, it's still your money. Once you file your returns, that is when it goes to the government. That is the date when it will debit from your electronic cash ledger. Payment of tax, what are the features? It is electronically generated challan. It is facilitation for the taxpayer. It is convenient because you can make the online payment anytime, anywhere. Logical tax collection in electronic fast format. It is faster remittance. Earlier, pre-GST, you had option to make a payment through the challan, go to the bank, and then get it cleared. It used to take Monday minimum. So much of time gets wasted. Now you can make the payment electronically. It's swift and instant. Paperless transaction, speedy accounting, electronic reconciliation, simplified procedure for banks also, and it acts as a warehouse of all the digital challans. Payments to be made for any intrastate transaction will be CGST and SGST. We know this. For interstate, it will be IGST. In addition, certain categories of TDS and TCS is there. In addition, interest, penalty, fees, and other payments has to be made. Liability to pay GST is on the supplier of goods who is liable to pay GST, supplier and receiver and import in case of reverse charge mechanism. Normal cases, supplier will pay for supplier of goods or services will pay the tax. And when will the receiver pay in case of import and reverse charge transaction? And in some specified cases like e-commerce operator, neither the supplier will pay, neither the receiver pay. The e-commerce will pay the taxes and collect it from the customer. What are the modes of payment? How do you make the payment of taxes? Today you have said that, okay, so much of GST is that GST goes to the government. How does it go? कैसे जाता है जीएसटी को गवर्नमेंट को टैक्स ऑनलाइन के थ्रू ऑनलाइन में कैसे पे कर सकते हो आप क्रेडिट कार्ड डेबिट कार्ड के थ्रू पे कर सकते हो यूपीआई के थ्रू पे कर सकते हो या फिर आईएमपीएस ये सब ऑप्शन है आपको टैक्स पे करने के लिए या फिर ऑफलाइन मोड अगर आपके पास ऑनलाइन नहीं है तो आप ऑफलाइन मोड भी कर सकते हो क्योंकि थोड़े लोगों के ऑनलाइन करना नहीं आता है तो फिर क्या करेंगे वो जीएसटी पोर्टल से चालान जनरेट करेंगे वहां पे पेमेंट ऑप्शन में सेलेक्ट कर देंगे कि मैं ऑनलाइन पे नहीं कर रहा हूँ मैं एनईएफटी के थ्रू पे कर रहा हूँ तो फिर एनईएफटी पे करके वहां से चालान जनरेट करेंगे चालान जनरेट करके बैंक के पास जाके उसको एनईएफटी करने के लिए बोलेंगे तब वो एनईएफटी हो जाएगा ठीक है वो एक ऑप्शन हो गया तो एक और ऑप्शन है कि आपको कैश के थ्रू ही पे करना है क्या आप कर सकते हो जीएसटी में कैश के थ्रू पेमेंट डज जीएसटी अलो यू टू मेक कैश पेमेंट गवर्नमेंट को टैक्स अब जीएसटी का टैक्स कैश में पे कर सकते हो यस अप टू 10,000 रुपीज करेक्ट थ्रू काउंटर मतलब बैंक के काउंटर में ही जीएसटी के ऑफिस में आप जाके कहीं कैश मत पे कीजिए कि देखिए मेरे को 6,000 रुपीज जीएसटी पे करना है मैं गवर्नमेंट डिपार्टमेंट में आ गया तो फिर दैट विल बी ट्रीटेड एज इलीगल आप डिपार्टमेंट में जाके कैश पे नहीं कर सकते हैं चेक के थ्रू आप तो बिल्कुल नहीं कर सकते हो क्योंकि वो तो क्लियरिंग कर ही नहीं रहे हैं आपको ऑनलाइन या फिर कैश ओवर द काउंटर ये दो ही मेथड है जो पेमेंट करना है आपको सो यू कैन मेक द पेमेंट गोइंग थ्रू द बैंक अगेन जनरेट चालान फ्रॉम द पोर्टल वहां पे कैश ऑप्शन टिक कीजिए और बैंक में जाके पेमेंट कीजिए वहां पे आप चेक कैश डिमांड ड्राफ्ट दे सकते हो डिपार्टमेंट में आप नहीं जा सकते। सो कैश अप टू द लिमिट ऑफ 10,000 रुपीज। द डेट ऑफ क्रेडिट अगेन ऑफ द अप्रोप्रिएट गवर्नमेंट शुड बी डीम टू बी द डेट ऑफ डिपॉजिट। नॉट आपने चेक प्रेजेंट कर दिया, वो नहीं चलेगा। जब क्लियरेंस होगा, दैट विल बी ट्रीटेड एज पेमेंट। ओटीसी लिमिट ऑफ 10,000 इज नॉट अप्लीकेबल, मतलब 10,000 इतना कम है, ये कुछ केसेस में अप्लीकेबल नहीं होगा। कौन से इंस्टेंसेस है? जब देयर इज अ डिपॉजिट टू बी मेड बाय गवर्नमेंट डिपार्टमेंट्स, जब गवर्नमेंट को कुछ टैक्सेस है उनको पेमेंट करना होता है, तब उनके लिए 10,000 लिमिट नहीं होता, उनके लिए एनी लिमिट हो सकता है। when the proper officer or any other officer authorized to recover outstanding dues, जब रिकवरी के लिए आते हैं और आप पेमेंट करने के लिए तैयार हो, आप बोलते हो मेरे पास कैश ही है, देन द रिकवरी ऑफिसर इंक्लूडिंग रिकवरी मेड थ्रू अटैचमेंट प्रोसीडिंग्स, या फिर जब वो रजिस्टर करता है, रिकवर करता है, ठीक है, और कुछ आपकी प्रॉपर्टी सेल करता है और कैश में रियलाइज होता है, तब आप ओवर द काउंटर अबाउट 10,000 भी पे कर सकते हो इन कैश। ठीक है, where the proper officer or any other officer authorized on the amounts collected by way of cash or check or demand draft during investigation and enforcement, जब वो enforcement करते हैं तब आपके पास पूरे पैसे निकल जाते हैं। करेक्ट, अगर इंस्पेक्शन कर रहा है इसका मतलब पूरे पैसे निकाल देगा, तो वो पूरा कैश को बोलेगा आपके पास इतना है, आप टैक्स पे कर दीजिए, तो फिर वो आप पे कर सकते हैं। लेकिन जरूरी नहीं है कि वो पे करना ही है। अगर कैश आइडेंटिफाई हुआ, इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि ये ब्लैक मनी है। जरूरी नहीं है कि आपके पास कैश अगर इन्वेस्टिगेशन में मिल गया तो आपको पूरा जमा करना है। वैसे ऑफिसर डराएंगे, आपको डराएंगे, आपके क्लाइंट को डराएंगे, लेकिन उसमें डरने की कोई बात नहीं है, बिकॉज इट इज जस्ट दैट इट इज कैश, इट इज अकाउंटेड कैश। आई हैव गॉट द मनी फ्रॉम माई कस्टमर, आई हैव गॉट मनी फ्रॉम माई वेंडर्स, I have got money from various sources. I can prove it to you. But if you are willing, then you can make the payment of anything during such proceedings. More than 10,000 in cash also is possible. Such fourth case is deposit to be made by persons notified by the commissioner. Commissioner बोल सकता है कि कुछ class of people है जिनको cash transactions ज्यादा आता है. So there you can make the deposit in cash itself. Okay. What is a challan? Challan is a electronically generated challan for all the three boards. It is a 14-digit unique CPIN number निकलता है, which is called as common portal identification number. You can generate it. Who can generate? Taxpayer, authorized representative, department officer also can generate, or any other person on behalf of a taxpayer. जैसे auction या recovery कुछ होता है, तब he can generate the challan and give it to you. चलान फॉर पेमेंट, ऑल पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्सेस, CGST, SGST, IGST के लिए अलग अलग चलान है, एक ही चलान में सब कुछ हो सकता है। उसमें मेजर हेड्स होते हैं कि CGST, SGST, IGST, SS। माइनर हेड्स होते हैं टैक्स, इंटरेस्ट, पेनाल्टी, वैसे माइनर हेड्स हो जाएंगे। ठीक है, मेजर हेड विल बी द टैक्स कंपोनेंट एंड माइनर हेड्स विल बी द नेचर, टैक्स है, इंटरेस्ट है, पेनाल्टी है, लेट फीस है, दैट विल बी द माइनर हेड्स। एक बार अगर चालान जनरेट हो गया है तो आप उसको पे करना ही पड़ेगा विद इन 50 डेज, वरना वो कैंसिल हो जाए। जब जनरेटेड चालान आउट, सेव इट, हाँ आपको ड्राफ्ट में सेव हो जाएगा, दैट वी कॉल्ड एज ड्राफ्ट चालान। फिर जब आपको पे करना है तब आप उसको पे कर सकते हो, लेकिन एक बार जनरेट करने के बाद आपको 15 डेज के अंदर पे करना है, वरना फिर वो कैंसिल हो जाएगा, आपको नया करना है, नो प्रॉब्लम। चालान डज नॉट हैव एनी ज्यूरिस्डिक्शनल लोकेशन कोड, सिर्फ आपका GST नंबर रहेगा और ये कैटेगरीज रहेगा। अनरजिस्टर्ड पर्सन या फिर कैजुअल टैक्सेबल पर्सन या फिर NRTP, उनको टैक्स भरना है, कैसे पे करेंगे? दे विल पे ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ टेम्पररी आइडेंटिफिकेशन नंबर, क्योंकि एक अनरजिस्टर्ड पर्सन है, अब उसको पे करना है, तो फिर क्या वो रजिस्ट्रेशन तक वेट कर सकता है? नहीं, उसको अनरजिस्टर्ड ही रहना है, उसको रजिस्टर होना भी नहीं है। तो उसका अगर कुछ टैक्स लायबिलिटी है, ही विल पे ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ अ टेम्पररी आइडेंटिफिकेशन नंबर। What are the basic features of payment process? Challan can be edited before finalization. However, once finalized and CPIN generated, no further. अगर आपने CPIN जनरेट कर दिया तो फिर कुछ चेंजेस नहीं होगा। तो ये फुल सिस्टम रिलेटेड है, दिस नथिंग मच टू डिस्कस हियर। Sir, is it mandatory to raise challan for paying tax? Yes. Without raising challan, you cannot make the payment because there is no mechanism to make the payment. You have to generate a challan. In your challan from the portal, all your details are there. You have to just key in the amounts. Money, then a challan is generated. From then you can make the payment. मैंने कहा मेजर हेड्स में क्या होगा टैक्सेस और माइनर हेड्स में होगा ये टैक्स इंटरेस्ट पेनाल्टी फीस एंड अदर्स अर्लियर देयर यूज्ड टू बी दैट आपको आईजीएसटी अगर पे किया है आईजीएसटी में आपको पेमेंट तो करना सीजीएसटी अगर आपने आईजीएसटी पे किया है तब आपको ट्रांसफर नहीं कर सकते हो दैट वाज अ प्रॉब्लमेटिक थिंग लेकिन 1 जनवरी 2000 से उन्होंने क्या किया एक नया ऑप्शन ला दिया है अंडर 49(9) में कॉल्ड एज PMT-09 PMT-09 इज अ वेरी हेल्पफुल थिंग कि आपको अगर कुछ टैक्स पे करना है अगर आपने गलत हेड में पे कर दिया तब आप उसको करेक्ट हेड में करेक्शन करके करेक्ट कर सकते हो आप उसको PMT-9 से आईजीएसटी में सीजीएसटी ट्रांसफर कर सकते हो so effectively if you get a question saying that I have to pay tax under CGST but I have paid tax under cess can I should I pay the cess again should I pay the CGST again no you can transfer it through filing this PMT-09 okay so who can transfer there are two ways to transfer a registered person can transfer from amount from one major head to another major head in the electronic cash ledger that is one aspect आपके एक डिस्टिंक्ट पर्सन है हु इज अ डिस्टिंक्ट पर्सन हु इज रजिस्टर्ड इन द स्टेट विद अ डिफरेंट जीएसटी नंबर या हु इज रजिस्टर्ड इन अनदर स्टेट विद अ डिफरेंट जीएसटी नंबर बट इफ इट इज अ डिस्टिंक्ट पर्सन you can transfer any amount available in the electronic cash ledger to the electronic cash ledger for IGST और CGST ऑफ अ डिस्टिंक्ट पर्सन क्योंकि SGST इस स्टेट का उस स्टेट का अलग रहेगा सो यू कैन नॉट ट्रांसफर SGST यू कैन ओनली ट्रांसफर IGST और CGST ऑफ अ डिस्टिंक्ट पर्सन बट अगर आपका कुछ लायबिलिटी है और आप किसी को बचाना चाहते हो तो वो नहीं हो सकता है यू कैन ओनली ट्रांसफर द कैश लेजर बैलेंस क्योंकि आपको सपोज आपका एक बैंगलोर में एक यूनिट है आपका एक और यूनिट है बॉम्बे में तो फिर बॉम्बे में टैक्स पेमेंट की जरूरी है यहाँ पे आपके पास एक्सेस टैक्स है आपको वहां पे ट्रांसफर करना है लेकिन इस मंथ का लायबिलिटी आपका ज्यादा आ गया है सो फर्स्ट आपको आपका लायबिलिटी पे करना है सो पे द लायबिलिटी देन इफ समथिंग इज लेफ्ट आउट यू कैन ट्रांसफर इट सो इफ यू फाइल योर रिटर्न आपका कुछ ऑर्डर आ गया और आपके लायबिलिटी रजिस्टर में कुछ दिख रहा है तो फिर उसको आप ऑफसेट कर से लायबिलिटी रजिस्टर जीरो होना चाहिए तभी आप कुछ ट्रांसफर कर सकते हो टू अनदर डिस्टिंक्ट पर्सन तो आपको कुछ अमाउंट डिस्टिंक्ट पर्सन को ट्रांसफर करना है तो फिर आपका लायबिलिटी रजिस्टर जीरो होना चाहिए आपके लायबिलिटी में तो इतना है और आप ट्रांसफर कर रहे हो दैट इज नॉट परमिटेड सो you should have your liability register zeroed out then only you can transfer it to the other distinct person ठीक है now such transfer can happen through form GST PMT-09 PMT-09 आपके इंट्रा हेड के लिए भी है और दूसरों को ट्रांसफर करने के लिए भी है बट दैट अदर पर्सन कैन नॉट बी एनी थर्ड पर्सन आपका फ्रेंड है उसको चाहिए तो आप क्या ट्रांसफर कर सकते हो नहीं कर सकते हो ओनली in case of a distinct person you can transfer it then payment of taxes by normal taxpayer on a monthly basis by 20th generally payment date क्या होता है 20th को cash payments will first be deposited in the cash ledger and then taxpayer shall debit the ledger by making the payment in the monthly ledger payment can be debited from credit ledger also payment of taxes for the month of March will be paid by 20th of April, वैसे ही होगा. And composition taxpayer need to pay tax on a quarterly basis. तो कॉम्पोजिशन टैक्स पेयर एक ऐसे बेनिफिशियल है जिनको क्वार्टरली पेमेंट करना है. बाकी सब लोगों जिन्होंने क्वार्टरली रिटर्न ऑप्ट किया है उनको भी मंथली पेमेंट करना पड़ेगा. इसीलिए वो टर्म है QRMP, क्वार्टरली रिटर्न मंथली पेमेंट टैक्स पेयर्स. ठीक है. Then we have CPIN. So once you generate a challan, a 14-digit unique number is generated, which is valid for 15 days. That is called as common portal identification number. Once you make the payment, then a CIN is generated called as challan identification number. It's a 17-digit codes, which will be 14 digits, 14 digits of the earlier CPIN and 3 digit will be added by the banker. So it will have a 17-digit code. Once a SIN is generated, it means payment is made. Then once a payment is made, they have some internal terms called as BRN, bank reference number, which will be the transaction number given by the bank for payment. And EFPB is a electronic focal point branch wherein each bank will have to appoint one per branch for any clearance of the GST, that is called as a electronic focal point branch. Then each bank will nominate one branch as its EFPB for all India transactions. For each banker के पास EFPB हो, so that clearance with the central bank, the Reserve Bank will happen, and any queries you can go to the EFPB. So those are the terms in terms of the payment. Now for workflow of payment, how does the workflow happen? GST will direct the taxpayer to the website. Once you go to the portal, if you select e-payment, it will direct you to the bank's portal. From the bank portal, you will enter your login ID and password. And once you make the successful payment, it will come back to the GST portal and a challan identification number, which is a 7-digit code, will get generated. GST will credit the amount into the cash ledger. So फिर आपके बैंक अकाउंट से बैलेंस कम होके इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर में चला जाएगा. So how does it work? It works that taxpayer goes to the GST and portal, generates the challan. From there, he selects pay option as net banking or credit card or debit card. You can make payment through one of these modes. Make the payment. Once you make the payment, it goes internally to the FPB and they will communicate to the GSTIN. फिर आपका credit will get added to your electronic cash ledger. Okay. Then we have rules for utilizing the electronic ledgers. So this will be that which credit has to be utilized against which. We know this, that electronic IGST first has to be utilized with IGST, then with CGST and SGST. Correct? That is what is utilization. So firstly, cash ledger, we have seen this, that cash ledger can be used only for payment of anything, tax, interest, penalty, or fees. This we have seen in the earlier slide itself. Credit ledger, you can use only for payment of tax, and it cannot be utilized for payment of any RCM also. Okay. Other aspects of payment of taxes will cover in the next class, because we have now to go to our MCQ on e-way bill. Perfect. Any doubts till now on payment of taxes? Good. Yeah, with respect to e-way bill, you can answer these questions. Answer mixed day. Okay. Answer is C. Yes. Cancel the e-way bill and generate a new one. वही है ऑप्शन और कुछ नहीं है अगर गलती हो गया तो. Second, yes, option is B. Both A and B has to be done. Both A and B. Goods are not supposed to be moved and transporter may extend the validity period. Question number C. Third one. Third आंसर कोई नहीं मिल रहा है. सिर्फ एक ही आंसर मिला है एंड इट इज द करेक्ट वन. Yes, only on authorization from the registered person. Is it required by the transporter to furnish information? Yes. अगर authorization है तो then he can mention all of these details. Okay. Question number 4. What is the form to be filled on the common portal for consolidated e-way bill? अच्छा थर्ड में काफी कंफ्यूज हो गए थे. So basically part A who can do it? Transporter if he's authorized he can do it. Yes, fourth one, it is correct. Consolidated e-way bill EWB 02. This is tricky question. Can only one e-way bill generated for one invoice? आंसर इज बी। सपोज मैं एक इनवॉइस रेज करता हूँ, उस इनवॉइस के लिए मल्टीपल डिलीवरी चलान्स करता हूँ, तो फिर इट इज पॉसिबल, राइट? सो आंसर इज बी। फॉर वन इनवॉइस यू नीड टू हैव वन ईवेबल, ऐसा नहीं है। फॉर वन इनवॉइस इफ यू हैव मल्टीपल डिलीवरी चालान, then you have can generate for one invoice also multiple e-way-bills. Correct, Swati? One invoice, multiple e-way-bills possible. Items which are exempted from e-way-bills are which of the followings? Sixth one, D. Yes. All of the above are exempted from e-way-bill. Seventh one. E-way bill can be generated when a dealer is opting for composition scheme, makes interstate supplies. Very interesting. Yes. Question number seven. He doesn't conduct interstate supply. Correct. So he can send the goods for job work. No, not for job work. The point thing is here more than e-label. It is on a composition taxpayer who is under composition scheme. He cannot do interstate supplies, right? So the answer is no. A composition scheme is available only for dealers doing intrastate supplies. The question is not checking the limits. The options are only to confuse you. So composition taxpayer cannot make an interstate supply. Question number eight, when the goods are supplied by a unregistered person to a registered person, who shall generate the e-way bill? Question number eight, answer yes. E-way bill, the goods are supplied by the unregistered person. The e-way bill can be generated by the registered person, provided the registered person is known to the unregistered person at the time of commencement of goods. So answer is yay. Question number nine. 9C, correct. Both A and B, that is, e-way bill can be cancelled if either goods are not transported or not transported as per the details, and the e-way bill can be cancelled within 24 hours from the time of generation. Correct. In case where goods are sent by the principal in one state to a job worker in another state, who shall generate the e-way bill? A, right. It is 10A principal. Right. Okay. So these were the MCQs with respect to this chapter. and we will continue on payment of taxes. And if any other questions you have, please let us discuss in the next question on payment of taxes and on the returns then. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Thank you.